hashtag rip bozo, lol, lamau. Anyways, that's out of the way, so how about we get into some of them album things I listened to in the last month? That sounds fun. This is Albumpressions. Ooh boy, I've put this one off because, well, it's nearly 3 hours long. That's a lot. Even listening to it in halves, it's a lot. But I kinda get why it's this way because, well, this has the feel of a video game soundtrack more than a proper album. The soundtrack to an epic indie RPG about ponies traveling across the land to stop some kind of great evil, I think. The writing's a little vague, and it seems to be part of an ongoing series, but I get the sense it's more a metaphor for a journey through life anyways, a lot of the album having undercurrents of struggling of self-doubt and seeking a purpose. Musically, it's in line with a lot of what Kingdom Hearts had to offer, though with, again, plenty of video game-esque sounds, and not just chiptune either. The kind of stuff that was all over indie games in the 2010s. It has a lot of color and personality to this album, and keeps it pretty diverse even for how long it runs. But, again, boy howdy does it run long, and it's not nearly as emotionally resonant for me either. Still worth a listen, though. This is more of a lifetime achievement review than anything because, man, y'all need to know about Sigh. Maybe not love them, because the Japanese avant-garde metal band with strong influences from black and heavy metal ain't gonna be everyone's cup of tea, but when you've been around for almost 30 years and you're still putting out albums of consistent quality and creativity, then hell, you deserve all the praise you can get. And while Shiki is far from their weirdest album, it's still pretty damn solid. It feels like the spectrum shifted more towards black metal on this one, making it a fair bit heavier and meatier than usual, but the production is on point to make the riffs crush, and there's still more than a fair bit of weirdness mixed in with the rocking out. And while I'm not sure it holds up against my favorites from them, those being Imaginary Sonescape and Insomnophobia, well, considering I is next in their cycle, maybe that one will be the one to really blow me away again. Looking forward to it and enjoying the hell out of this one in the meantime. Alos's spectral lore continues to be one of the most prolific forces in the modern black metal scene, so much so that this is like his third project this year, albeit only the first one I'm covering. And this is some raw, bare bones black metal in pretty much the best ways. Essentially, spectral lore's sound boiled down to its most basic elements, and I mean that as a compliment, because Alos can write some damn good and wonderfully atmospheric black metal when he really wants to. That's part of what made 3 so damn good in the first place. And there's all sorts of flavors on display here. The raw intensity of Voice of the Gleaming Edge, the languid groove of Molten Gold, the almost doom metal infused crusher of Ancient Corridors. Aside from some minor production gripes around the busier moments on the album, there's really nothing to complain about. It's just a good sound done really well. Maybe not the most exciting black metal release of the year, but that doesn't stop it from being one of the better ones either. Woo boy, this is a lot. Chaotic, angry mathcore with not much of a melodic edge that bashes into all sorts of musical diversions without sacrificing its core sound. Feeling way overstuffed on ideas for an album that doesn't even run 40 minutes, but I don't mean that as an insult, because the songs themselves do have their own identities. I do think the opening 3 tracks run together a tad in their unrelenting mathcore madness, but the album unfolds into a much more colorful sound after that, though the harsh riffs and grueling intensity never completely go away either. Content-wise, it's a bit abstract, but there's an underlying thread of grief towards the loss of a friend, and anger at the systems that caused that death to occur, mixed in with shots at the online culture that both provides distraction from that grief, but also fills up what little free time we have with those meaningless distractions, keeping our eyes away from more important issues. That lines up with the violent but often sidetracked nature of the songwriting, so it feels like the Silent Planet of this year. Maybe not completely my thing, but I'm glad I heard it. I think it's important to do album impressions like this sometimes, where the follow-up to an album I love just completely misses the mark and leaves me disappointed, where I'm trying to figure out what went wrong. Admittedly, in this case, it's very easy to pinpoint what went wrong. Their lead vocalist and evidently most ambitious songwriter left the band, so that sprawling, adventurous, twisted, and terrifying tech death magnum opus has been distilled down to another tech death album. Yup, this sure is one. Definitely heavier on chugging riffs and less on spiraling technicality, and while there are still some of the weirder asides, they're not as frequent, not as abrupt, and not as compelling, and the natural melodicism that weaves its way into even their heavier moments has also been stripped back. There's basically nothing of what I enjoyed about their debut, about what balanced out the sheer brutality of their core sound. It's just boring now. To put it another way, if you called their debut deathcore, it'd be a horrific insult and I'd laugh you out of the room. If you called this album deathcore, I'd shrug my shoulders and go, yeah, I guess. What a shame. Ever hear that kind of album that's just like really generically good, where it's not really pushing the boundaries of its genre or doing anything particularly fresh, but what it is doing it does so damn well it's hard not to just be kind of in awe of it? Anyways, An Abstract Illusion. Progressive melodic death and black metal with a grand scope and a huge symphonic flair. Like, everything this album does, it just does really well. Chunky, doomy riffs, chugging death metal grooves, intense black metal atmospheres, delicious melodic leads, gorgeous piano interludes, following one of my favorite album formats where, like, yeah, every track has its own personality and a start and a finish, but they all flow together seamlessly and the whole thing is structured like one long song. A magnum opus of melodic metal. I was pretty much sold on this by the end of the third track, and it never really let up in just being really damn good. Talking about it almost feels pointless. Just go check it out if it sounds even remotely interesting, cause you'll probably like what you hear. And now from an album that literally just came out to an album that's nearly as old as I am. Drive Like Jehu are one of the foundational acts of mid-90s post-hardcore, and an act I've known of, but have never really checked out. Until I recently got a push to do so, and goddamn have I been missing out. My first thought being, oh boy, Gospel are definitely fans of these guys, but that comparison isn't one-to-one either. There's a lot of the same unhinged, chaotic energy here, but it's a lot more dissonant, and there's also plenty of more languid, groove-driven tunes that rely on atmosphere as much as riffs. And for a nearly 30-year-old album, god damn does this thing just sound great. Scuzzy and crisp guitars, thick juicy bass, punchy and dynamic drums. The vocal style may be the one letdown for me, alongside a lack of hooks, and the Gen X angst doesn't completely click for me, though the angrier, righteous political aspects certainly hold up even all these years later. But yeah, well, I see why this is considered a classic in the genre. Glad I finally got to it. And now even further back to the 80s, oh wait, no, this is synthwave, right. So, I did check out this group's new album, and it's fine, but I've been meaning to get to their debut for a while now because I've heard good things about it, and this was a perfect excuse, so yeah, this is slick as hell. The blissed out vibe of a summer fling that you wish could last forever underlines the album's sound, and while it's maybe not masterful in terms of hooks or catchiness, what they lack there is made up for by some stellar atmosphere. This thing just sounds gorgeous front to back, and while it's pretty deep into one specific style, there's enough variety across its 60-minute runtime that it never feels stale. A few instrumentals, a few tracks I can only describe as Porter Robinson run through an 80s filter, and a few tracks heavily dominated by the goat of all goats, the saxophone, which no 80s pastiche is ever complete without a sax. It is a pastiche, admittedly, one of the reasons why I prefer synthpop to synthwave in general, but it's a damn good one, so whatever. And that'll do it for this month. Maybe not quite as much going on as this fairly sizable batch of albums would make it seem. Only 5 albums from this year here, but looking at what's coming in just the next month alone, woo boy, I'm gonna have my work cut out for me. And I'm excited as hell for it too. Catch y'all then.